effective way here when you look at the success of the construction maintenance or the contract maintenance system here. At the end of all things, I think you need to look at some effects that may come out from this legislation if it is put into place. First, you need to look at the effect on wages. A number of people have said, oh, this could be a boogeyman. Truth is, if you look at some wall-to-wall unions and some fragmented unions, go to the lower mainland of British Columbia, talk to Darryl Fleming from the Labor Board there or a number of other people. They will tell you that with dueling carpenter unions, where there's more than one carpenter union, at a time of rising prices, in a rising tide, the civil trades get paid less on every job because dueling unions are looking to see who can take the work for the lowest. It means workers are working for one union today, one union tomorrow. Their benefit plans are not guaranteed. They don't know where their benefits are going to go, and there is instability created in the equation. If you are looking at the effect on wages, I would ask you to look at the effect on competition. If competition is based on wages, you're going to get a depression in wages. I'd ask you to look at the effect on some of the organizations. There hasn't been a stampede of contractors saying, trade contractors, the 85%, saying, get us out of this terrible system, must mean that the system works for them. Someone asked the question as to why wouldn't the trade contractors be here to speak to that issue, and alluded, I think, perhaps even a tad unfairly, that it would be some pressure from the union. Well, the chances are for a trade contractor to come here and say, I think this is a great thing, and look right into the eye of one of the general contractors he bids to, that might be a more difficult set of affairs than anything the union could ever do to him. The effect of creating alternate bargaining structures within a bargaining structure can only have the effect of weakening the unions. Weak unions do not make good deals. Unions who are competing to say, I can give you the lowest possible cost, will not give you the best answer. You know, if you look around and say, what exactly do some of these unions bring to the table? And you look at the construction unions across this country, we spend $200 million a year training people. We have an infrastructure across this country of 1,000 training centers for which are worth about $600 million replacement cost. We trained somewhere in the range of 150,000 people last year, some in trade skills, some in safety, some in upgrading. That comes out of the collective agreement. That comes out of a collective well. Getting rid of the building trades unions or impairing their function impairs that ability to do training. So if you're inclined to have CEP and CLAC at the table, don't let them depress markets, put them in at the table. The effect on the registered employers organization, you need to look at. A registered employers organization needs to be able to resolutely represent those employers that empower it. If there needs to be a change which would allow the employers to all get together and say, we, all of the mechanical contractors, we spit on the floor, CLR, we want the Mechanical Contractors Association or somebody else to do it, maybe you're building in some choice by doing that. But the truth is, keeping a CLR or a CLR-like group that can effectively represent the employers is an absolute bedrock requirement for your system. I can keep going on this for days, but maybe the time would be served better by saying those are my submissions, and I would respectfully answer any questions that you may have of me.
Thank you, Mr. Blakely. We will now entertain questions to the Canadian Building and Construction Trades Department. First on the list is Mr. Leclerc.
You stated that safety wasn't a concern whether it was in wall-to-wall or individual unions?
I didn't speak to safety at all. I would say this, if you look around and look at the numbers, and if you look at, say, the number of fatalities, there are very, very, very few fatalities on building trades jobs.
Well,
there are very few fatalities. There aren't the fatalities there were before. There's a number of companies that have great safety records, whether they're a union or non-union.
well, I took it to mean when you were saying that no one, whether they were wall-to-wall or individual union, would tell a kid, get the broom out of your hand, you've been here for 2 weeks.
You're
okay.
right.
So I was presuming that that meant that whether it was wall-to-wall or individual unions, they have a concern for the safety of their workers and would not put somebody in an unsafe
To be completely fair, there are a number of non-union or alternate unit contractors who have absolutely tremendous safety. There are a number of contractors that don't, which is why 30% of all the fatalities every year across this country is in construction, even though we have only 8% of the workforce.
Thank you. In terms of competition, and again, I'm not a union person and trying to figure out.
I could tell.
Yeah, but I'm also not a non-union person.
I could tell that as well.
I ran charities, so I didn't need to work with union, and many of my friends are tradespeople, and I don't have a particular dislike for unions. It's not part of my ideology. And so I'm trying to be fair and find out and ask questions from that premise.
Yes, sir.
And this may sound simplistic to you in my lack of knowledge, but you're saying that this issue of competition, that if I'm not incorrect, and I may be, the issue of competition, if someone has to deal with one union and one union only, not two unions, not two trade unions and carpenters. My understanding is that we have one union here in the province for carpenters, another one for welders, another one.
Yes.
And so we don't have two unions of each trade competing against each other, working with an employer for competition. We have one trade union dictating what that particular trade will charge in a particular job or wages. And that particular trade can stop the action of a construction site by going on strike. Now, do I not understand this right? That competition takes more than one person bidding on a job?
I agree with that completely, but I think you misapprehend exactly what the construction business is. If you were to look at, go get the yellow pages for Regina and look at mechanical contractors, the mechanical contractors that are in that book, and there's probably a couple hundred of them, will in the main employ plumbers. They may employ a couple of sheet metal workers, they may employ a couple of refrigeration workers, but generally speaking, they're competing with their peers, other mechanical contractors, for bidding on the plumbing work in a high-rise building. They have one union, the United Association of the Plumbers. They deal with them. There is a possibility for sequential striking under this system, and there needs to, and in other provinces, there are forms of dispute resolution systems for that. But you've got the exact same issue if they're wall-to-wall. I mean, in our business, I said 85% are trade contractors. 85% are pretty much straight line. We're all iron workers, we're all boiler makers, we're all pipe fitters. We may have some other people from other trades, but those are our trades. Boiler maker, steel fitter, welder, those are all their own trades, right? Will a union that has all of the trades under one, will that be a more efficient bargaining system? Not necessarily. You know, you look at large tag-end units of people who are unsatisfied, you tend to get upset in bargaining. If you look at all the learned works that talk about